Everyone. This week we are going to work on narrowing down your topic choice for your research paper so you can also construct your proposal. Now, when it comes to these topics, I do have a few criteria that I would like for you to kind of meet when it comes to this. One, and most importantly, you must be able to academically research it. As I mentioned in class, great example of this is I had a student who wanted to write about her grandfather. I was like, well, was your grandfather famous? Did he do anything? And she's like, well, no, not really. I'm like, well, maybe we can tie it to something that your grandfather did in his life. And say, for example, he fought in the Korean War. You could technically write a research paper on the Korean War, but include an interview from your grandfather in it, because you can academically research the Korean War, like what battles happened and whatnot, and then you could like pull in your grandfather's experience. So that's something that you could do. Let's say one of your grandparents went to Woodstock or fought in the Vietnam War or was witness to something extraordinary, like, maybe the Challenger explosion, or maybe they served in, or maybe one of your parents served in Iraq or whatnot. But those are all things that, as long as you can academically research it, you can write about it. But you could also bring in some experiences from people that you know. It should be something, two and three, sorry, go hand in hand, but it should be something that you either know a lot about or want to know more about. And you also must find it interesting. So let's say you've always wanted to learn more about jet skiing. There's some academic articles out there, I'm pretty sure, on that, or some way that you can research that. Or let's say you've always wanted to learn more about why relationships between the United States and Russia have always been so bad. Like right now, there's that whole thing happening with the Ukraine. Like, what's the history behind it, and why is the United States so, involved in that? Like, I didn't know a lot about it, so I actually did some research on it, and I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So, if there's something that you just really, really wanted to learn more about, go for it. But if there's something that you're already knowledgeable in, like if you have been playing baseball for, 12 years of your 18 years of life, and you know a lot about baseball, and there's some sort of aspect that you'd want to write about, like a particular player, or some of the scandals that have rocked baseball in the past few years, like player strikes, or there was the whole thing with a steroid use in baseball. There's a lot of stuff like that out there. Go for that. It's something that you know about because you've been in that baseball life. Those are just some examples. I've had students pull in their real life experience. Like a few years ago, I had a student whose brother was diabetic. And so she wrote her research paper on juvenile diabetes, because one, she did know a lot about it, but she also wanted to know more about it, and she found it interesting because it was affecting her brother, and therefore it was affecting her life too. So I've had a lot of students do that, where like they take a diagnosis that either their parents or their grandparents have, like Alzheimer's, breast cancer. I've gotten papers on all of that because they just wanted more knowledge for themselves. Or I've had students that wanted to go into special ed, so they did some papers on autism because they knew that they were going to be working with autistic children in their career. So they thought, this is a great opportunity for me to learn more about autism. So as long as you find it interesting and that, you're going to enjoy researching it, that's probably the most important thing. You must be able to write at least 5 pages on this topic, because I'll give you a heads up, that's the minimum for your research paper. And I know that sounds like a lot, but surprisingly, students usually write way more than 5 pages, because if they follow 2 and 3, then they find it really interesting and they get all this information. And so honestly, a lot of these papers wind up being 6, 7, and even 8 pages long. And that's fine. But if you want to do the bare minimum five, that's fine with me too. You also must be able to find at least 5 sources about this topic. So if it's something that you're kind of interested in, you might want to just kind of do some baby research to make sure that there's enough out there in order for it to be researchable. And I don't have this listed on here, but one thing just to be aware of is you don't want your topic to be too broad. You do kind of want to narrow it down a little bit. So again, let's say you want to interview your grandfather about his experiences in the Korean War and write about the Korean War. The Korean War happened over several years and there have been entire books written about it. Maybe narrow it down to like a specific battle that your grandfather served in or specific years that he served in, that type of thing. Again, like autism is a really broad subject. So let's say thinking in autism, well, what specifically do I want to learn more about? I want to know how to help children with autism. So that kind of narrows it down just a little bit. So just be thinking when you're thinking of these topics. And for your assignment this week, I'm going to ask you to list 3 potential topics. And when you do that, I'll be kind of giving some feedback, telling you this is a great topic. It might be just a little bit too broad, so you might want to narrow it down to be a little bit more specific, that type of thing. That's why we're doing this exercise, just to kind of help you brainstorm and realize exactly what you want your topic to be. Now, how do you find these topics? There are several ways you can do that. One easy way that I always tell students to do is just to start doing some research. Look on news sites. Like this is msn.com, and you can kind of go through here and look and see what kind of topics. So you've got COVID. There have been so many things written about COVID, both academically and documentary wise. You should probably have no problem if you did want to try to write about COVID. I don't know if I would suggest that because it's been kind of saturated. Would be really interesting, like kind of the history of the Supreme Court and what goes into being a Supreme Court justice and the nominees. You know, Biden is trying to find an African-American woman nominee, and there hasn't been one. So who have been the Supreme Court justices and how has that impacted America? That might be a really kind of cool topic to explore. North Korea. Why do we hate North Korea? Why do they hate us? The Russian incident that's going on. Just kind of looking at other topics here, seeing if anything kind of jumps out. This was really sad. A former Miss USA committed suicide. So that makes me start thinking about mental health. What kind of mental health topics would I be interested in? That was just a really, really sad situation. So that was MSN. Here's Yahoo. Let's see if there's anything interesting on Yahoo today. Not too much. Football? I don't know much at all about football, nor do I have a great interest in football. I usually watch the Super Bowl for the commercials. That might be cool. The economic impact of Super Bowl commercials. Where you could kind of research some of the best Super Bowl commercials of all time and how they if it was even worth the money, because I think it costs millions of dollars to even just have a Super Bowl commercial. It's like, do they actually reap the benefit of that? Let's see. Oh, college fund. Mom blown away after discovering daughter spending plans for college fund. The cost of college, that would be a great thing to explore for many of you. Let's see, what else is out there? Sorry, I talk to myself when it comes to stuff like this. This was a really sad story. This reporter for CNN, his older daughter passed away from a very rare form of brain cancer. And so part of me I remember reading this article earlier and I was like, well, what kind of cancer is that? I haven't heard of that. I want to learn more about it. How does it affect children and impact people? But, you can just kind of look at the news, see what's going on. I know some of you would probably love to write about Tom Holland. I don't know if that would be a great research paper. That was better for last semester. Janet, the Jackson family. Ooh, yeah, that's a whole thing right there. That you can go into, like the pressures of fame and how it impacts people. There's been a lot of psychological reports on things like that. That might be kind of an interesting thing to explore as well. There are some websites, and I have links posted to these that are just research paper topic ideas, just amazing ideas to get started. So it gives a little bit of suggestions on how to get started, but it also has college research paper topics. Look through the list of these topics and see if there's anything that kind of interests you, like the significance of a four-year college degree. Do you even need college? Distance learning versus traditional learning. There has been a ton of data that has come out of the pandemic that has been published. I can already tell you there's a lot of stuff on the academic databases about distance learning versus traditional learning now. Racism and the laws of the United States, kind of exploring our criminal justice system. I've had a student do a paper on that before, and it was fantastic. Legalizing marijuana is always a pretty popular one, and there's a lot of stuff that goes along with that. The effectiveness of ecotourism, pros and cons of a vegan diet. If that floats your boat, that's not something that would be overly interesting to me, but I wouldn't mind learning more about it. So if you wanted to explore something like that, that would be great. If some of you are history buffs, there are some history topics that might be kind of interesting to explore. Research paper topics on education, homeschooling versus traditional schooling. Should we even be thinking about changing the way we do schooling now? There's a lot of debate as to public schools if they get it right. If you like health topics, like keto diet, really, really popular right now. Is it even worth it? Some of you might like this, impact of stress and anxiety on the functions of the brain. I did have a student write a paper on senioritis. Is it real? And turns out it is. And she could actually find some academic papers on that. So I'll leave you to kind of look through this particular website on your own, but it has a lot of good ideas. Here is another one, just another website that you can kind of go through, and it just has some research paper topic ideas. Once you get down here, controversial. Don't shy away from controversial topics. I would be more than happy for you to research some of these. Let's see here. And you can have fun with this. Now, these fun research paper topics, like how to stop being a couch potato, I don't think that would actually be probably one that I guess you could academically research that. It would be a little bit more difficult, and it might be a little bit fun to explore. But, like number 2, why did we start celebrating Halloween? I'd like to know. Actually, I do know, but if any of you would like to know, that might be something fun, because it really goes into history and religion, and it's really messy and dark in some ways. What are some of the positive side effects of energy drinks and coffee? Coffee is fantastic. You might not think so, but I personally think coffee is wonderful. But why do we drink it? It's really bitter, and it really is an acquired taste. So, like, who is the funniest historical figure and why? I would probably try to narrow that down to be specific, like try to find a particular person and kind of try to study them. Let's see here. So some of the funny research projects that might be, you could do them, but it would be a little bit harder to do. But some of these like argumentative research topics, those would be, really interesting to explore for anyone who maybe is so inclined. But the bottom line is just to find something that you would enjoy writing about and to have some fun with it. As I said, for your assignment, I just want you to jot down 3 potential topics and why you think that they would be good research topics. And I will try to get through those fairly quickly and get some feedback back to you, so that way you can start working on your proposals. And as always, if you have any questions or concerns, just let me know.